Welcome to the first ever episode of Footballers Global. For those of you who have yet to check out Footballers Global, we aim to give you a better insight and understanding of our player showcase and support platform that allows players to showcase their CVs directly to verified and professional scouts. My name is Liam O'Connor and I'm joined by Rob Revel, who is the founder of Footballers Global, and Jimmy Carter, ex-professional footballer who started his career at a tender age of 13 at Crystal Palace and spent a large part of his career at Millwall before progressing to play for two of the largest clubs in world football, Arsenal and Liverpool. We're going to kickstart this podcast with a brief overview of Footballers Global. Robert is going to give us a bit of an insight and a background into Footballers Global and why it's great for players and scouts alike.
So Footballers Global is a player showcase and support platform, purely focusing on supporting the players through their journey, no matter what level they come from. Our aim is to build a community of players, parents, scouts, teams, and even referees, and bring everybody together to create a healthy environment for all players to come for their support, to showcase themselves in a safe environment, to get a good network of scouts and agents together, educate the players, and on the back of that, try and help them find as many realistic opportunities within football.
I mean, there's quite an interesting story behind why Footballers Global was established and where you really sort of saw that there was a gap in the market from your own previous experience and your journey through football. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I was the same as everyone, playing grassroots football with a dream to be a football player. I was fortunate enough to be offered an opportunity, and same as hundreds of thousands of kids, it didn't come to anything. There's many reasons why it didn't come to anything, but at the time, I'm like a lot of kids. You just automatically think I'm no good, and that's it. I'm rubbish. I'm not good enough, and that's why we see all these sad stories of kids. You just never see them again. They just drop out. As I grew older, and I was a football fan, and I still followed football quite heavy, I was seeing other people's stories, and then as I got older, I was learning it's not just about not being good enough. There's many reasons why people don't make it as a football player.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, back then, we're going back, 25, 30 years, there wasn't as much access for me to learn that. I just thought, that's it, it's finished. And I went back down and started playing with my friends. You start getting a bit depressed, etc. But then again, now as I'm older and some of my friends have had kids, my son's just started playing himself. You start to hear the stories of what they're saying, and I'm thinking to myself, this is the same stories as 25, 30 years ago. How is the same problems, the same, with all of the resources we've got now with the internet and all of the research, why are we still hearing the same stories? So I thought, right, we need to build a community, and we need these players to understand that this is a place for them to come for a bit of help, a bit of advice, a few tips, some great ambassadors on board for some great encouragement. Not saying we are going to make anyone a pro, nobody can do that, but we can give them some advice, some tips, and be there as a little bit of a safety net, and just try to help our best of just giving them another chance. Because if you get rejected from one club, like I say, there's many reasons, and we'll go into them with Footballers Global on our platform of what all them reasons, and we'll focus on the reasons, and we'll try to target the reasons, and we'll try to stop these kids from going down the same road as what hundreds of thousands have done over the years.
So when you say obviously the challenges, I mean, what would you say the key challenges that Footballers Global aims to address and help and support players with?
There's a good few, and it's hard to reel off what the most important one is. Obviously, for me, the most important one is the mental health side of things, because of if you know if you fall into the mental health category because of football, that could then affect you for many years of the rest of your life. So that we need to dive into that and hopefully get some good guest speakers on to help these kids and get them, just make them aware. But by doing that, I also think as well, by helping them create opportunities and not letting them think they're not good enough. Um, I just think by bringing it all together, there's so many issues within it. But for me, I think mental health, depression is probably top of the list, because that's for health reasons.
Yeah.
And since we've started it, I've obviously been diving in, researching myself, and I've found there's a lot more problems out there than what I even knew there was.
Yeah.
So another real strong one of mine is the online security,
Yeah.
which
That's
again, the
there.
online security is a big one.
Yeah.
Um, you know, there's a lot of fraudsters out there. We hear it on the internet about everything, but also it is happening in football. There is football players getting conned. There is a lot of things going on. But again, that's something that we can dive into later on.
I think the
Um,
other thing is, as well, is as a player having the opportunity to create your own CV, and that's a fully downloadable CV on Footballers Global that you may not know as a player. First thing, the first way to start building out a CV, but we have that ready-made structure built into the actual profile where players can then use that, share that with their friends, share it on social media. And along with the community aspect of it as well, where they can actually share their videos and photos on Footballers Global as well.
yeah. Again, whilst we've been building it, I've been contacted by hundreds and hundreds of players, and a lot of them do want to just ping you over a CV and a video. And when we're opening it, it's what we want to do is we want to help them present themselves properly. What they send over, it's not even worth reading a lot of the time. The videos are slung together. So with Footballers Global, what we'll help them do is they do get an online profile, um, which will guide and prompt them on how to fill it out. So what happens is once they've actually completed their profile online, all they've got to do is click a download button, and we will then ping them back a PDF version of a really nicely laid out football CV
Yeah.
with links to their videos and stuff, which again is a big problem for players because they don't know how to conduct themselves when they're talking to people. So that's another topic, where that's going to help them. Just even breaking the ice a lot of the time, just breaking the ice and starting a conversation rather than just literally, I open my computer every day and you've just got a kid who's just literally flinged a video to you. It's like you got to break the ice. There's a way of talking to people, and so yeah, we're going to help them with that as well.
Jimmy, how are you? We're very lucky to have Jimmy Carter as part of Footballers Global as our one of our key ambassadors, and obviously offering help and support to the players and advice as well. I guess, Jimmy, obviously, when you were breaking into the game, there was nothing like Footballers Global around at the time. I mean, how do you see how Footballers Global could have helped you back in the day?
Yeah, absolutely, Liam. I think looking back at my career, of course, so blessed and honoured to have had the career that I was able to have. And but it wasn't all that plain sailing when I was younger, and that's one of the reasons why I got involved with Footballers Global when Rob approached me. Of course, as you can imagine, I get approached by many people over the years, and to get involved in this, that, or the other. But for me, what stuck out was yourself and Rob's passion in order to take Footballers Global to a real large audience, in order to help and showcase football players, young, as young as 10, 11, even further on, 16, 17, but also players that perhaps have also come out of football who may be at a good level.
Yeah.
For me, growing up, all I ever wanted to be was a football player. There was no plan B. no safety net, but I was very thankful to be picked up by Crystal Palace when I was 13. Signed schoolboy forms, signed apprentice, signed my first professional contract at 18 years old, and that's when it went pear-shaped for me. I was on the scrap heap. I got released by Palace, and it was a really, really dark time for me. If there was something like Footballers Global out there at the time, it would have been so much easier for me to tap into and give me that opportunity, a better opportunity, in order to try and get myself back in the game that I loved. Of course, nothing was like that around 30 years ago. So, I had to go down different angles, and thankfully, I was eventually got back in after a lot of heartache and dark times. But once I got back in, I eventually signed for Millwall. Had 4 good years there. Ended up playing for 2 of the biggest clubs in world football. So, I really do understand it from a player's perspective, and I know firsthand how hard it is to get back into the football arena and football space once you've been let go. Because there's always that thing where, if you've been released, sometimes clubs maybe automatically think, or certainly in the past, traditionally they felt was there might be something wrong with that player. But I also think it's an opportunity for players to really show their resilience, and brush themselves down and really think to themselves, you know what, this is not the end for me. Yeah. And the fact that something like Footballers Global exists, it will give them that helping hand in order for them to showcase their talents with their CVs, as Rob mentioned, in order to get themselves back in the game. Because we've got accredited scouts, which is very important to add. These scouts that have been filtered and monitored. So we know there's scouts globally constantly looking at the Footballers Global platform in order to find talent. So this is where if players are released, that's not where it ends. That's where you start again, and that's what I love about Footballers Global.
Just touching on that, how, obviously you're still very heavily involved in the game in a variety of different aspects. Touching on your experience of the challenges that you faced coming through, would you say that those are there's young players coming through today are facing similar challenges, or how's the dynamic changed? Is it just exactly the same as it was 30 years ago in terms of being released? How is it different?
It's always been really, really tough, Liam. You just got to look at the percentages in terms of how many players actually come through. Yeah, it's such a small percentage of players. But I think as a player yourself, you have to believe that you're going to be in that 0.1%. You can't look at them statistics and rely too heavily on that, or even focus on that. You have to believe in your ability as a player. But just touching on the point that you make in terms of what's the difference, it's always been tough. I think it's always been very, very tough to break through. I think the big difference now is that players are starting a lot earlier, and getting picked up by clubs a lot earlier. So when I was playing, if you were sort of lucky if you got picked up by a club when you were 11, maybe 12 years old. I got picked up by Crystal Palace playing on Hackney Marshes for my district team, Hackney Schools, when I was 13 years old, and that was perceived to be quite young, or the norm in them days. But you look at players now who are getting picked up by academy clubs, Premier League clubs, Championship clubs, and they're like sometimes 4 and 5 years old, and that's the big difference. And but that also presents its own challenges, because a young player could be picked up by a professional club at 4 or 5 years old, could be with that particular club for many years until they're 10, 11 years old, and then sorry to say, but sometimes they get asked to leave the club. And you can just imagine, Rob touched on it with the mental health side of things. You can imagine it from a player's perspective, how hard that would be to take when you think that you've got your dreams and aspirations, and all of a sudden that gets taken away from you. And I think that's one of the big things about Footballers Global. We're here to support and enable you to showcase your talents in order to get back into football. If you're not in football, to get into football. So that's I would say it's the age gap in terms of the age difference in terms of how clubs identify and scout players is probably one of the biggest differences from when I was playing when I was younger.
And how are the clubs addressing it now? I mean, is there a noticeable difference in terms of how academies are dealing with, having to release players? Is there any kind of more thought gone into the way in which
What I
they,
would say to
or
that,
is it similar to how it was done back then? Sorry, guys, you're surplus to requirements, or we're going to have to let you go. I mean, that's the renowned term, isn't it?
yeah, I think one of the big differences, again, looking back to when I was playing and coming through and getting scouted, these days, what you find is what clubs do is they tend to throw a blanket and over a vast amount of players, bring them into the academy or bring them into the development centres, in just on the basis of them being fearful, in effect, of missing out on talent. So they'll go volume rather than back in the day. If you were scouted, there was a good chance that you had a good chance of maybe showing that you could come through. What clubs do now is so fearful, like I say, of of missing out on talent. They invite so many kids into the environment, and it's just inevitable that not everyone's going to come through. So there's a lot more heartache and perceived failure out there when it's not the player's fault. The player gets called in, and all of a sudden, when you get called into a football club, the first thing you think of, and the player's parents think of, is fantastic. My son's going to be a pro footballer. But
Yeah.
what they don't realise is they're broadening their net clubs far and wide, and sometimes whereas individual scouts who are maybe going out, back in the day, were looking at one or two players thinking, yes, he could really make a difference at a football club. Where I can say that's probably a big difference now in terms of scouting.
When the players actually register, what we find at the moment is they send sort of like a pre-built CV across. Now, the idea of our platform, when they register, they to fill out the profile in exactly the way that we've laid it out onto our fields. And the reason why that benefits the players so much is because when it then becomes for the scouts to register, a scout actually has a global search engine.
Right.
Now, on that search engine, it's quite detailed, so they can search the nationalities, the positions, the age of the players, and they can. There's quite a nice range of tools for them to use. But the important thing for the players to understand is, unless the players have filled out our profiles with
Right.
quite good detail, they will not land in front of the scouts. So, for the players to bear in mind that they're not sort of getting spotted by a lot of scouts. And then that leads me to why it's good for the scouts, is because once we have this database of lots of talented players, they'll have that search engine available to them. So, and again, it's completely free of charge for the scout. We want to work with the scouts to try and help create as many opportunities as we possibly can. So there's no charge for them. But what they will have to do is, when they register, they will have to send us their scouting qualification, where the qualifications match the registration, etc. And it's not until we receive that and that's live on their profile will we then allow them access to see the players. So
Right.
this way, again, going back to earlier on about online safety, etc., we're trying to do our best to really help on our side of things, as well as educate the players. And again, the bigger the database, the more scouts that come along, the more opportunities are gonna come from it. It just all fits hand in hand. The beauty about Footballers Global as well, from our point of view, we don't own an academy. We're not a football agency,
Yeah.
so we have no hidden agendas. Quite often you'll find little things and see people doing stuff. Now, they've got their own academies, they've got their own agencies, etc. Now, for me, that's all cool. But there's a little bit of, maybe they'll take the best players before and leave the rest for everybody else. Footballers Global, totally independent. We can work with everybody. So all the players that come, if you're a scout, we literally give you access to everybody. All we ask for is you've got to go through the vetting process before we do it.
There's no favoritism. in
No,
terms?
none at all. None at all. And that goes with the players as well. It doesn't matter what level you've played at. I mean, obviously, it's down to you how much work you put into your highlight videos and your CVs and stuff. You know, as a scout's going to want to see a nice amount of footage, and don't just have to be your good bits. It can be anything.
Yeah,
But the beauty with this as well is it's Footballers Global. Our scouts have already registered from off the top of my head about 16 plus countries, and they're from all different levels of football. So again, when I spoke about myself years ago, not being good enough for a first division club, there was no Premier League. The first division club in England at the time, I had no clue. I just went with my mates. Now there was nobody there to say, why don't you go and try a sort of second division team out in Sweden or something like that. Now we've got the scouts coming to our platform, so that's another way of us helping you showcase to a wider audience.
yeah, and I guess also as well, even if you're playing at whatever level you may be playing at the time, it doesn't hurt to have your profile out there. If you want to refer to it from a business perspective, people always have their professional profiles live on LinkedIn. It doesn't necessarily mean they're looking for another job, but it's just showcasing their abilities and making connections. And that I guess also leads into the community side of it as well, where there's an opportunity for fans or parents to put their children, and safeguard their children, and that community element of it. Hence, being able to share videos, stories, and stuff like that. So, but that's from the team side of thing. Obviously, this is a developing area of the site. But what would you say the sort of like core elements of the teams teams being on there and having an actual profile on there as a team profile?
Oh, yeah, so each team it's different because there's many levels of teams. So this is something that we've programmed and it is on the site, but it's sort of work in progress, and as the community builds, we will tailor we will tailor make it to suit each team's needs. Every level of club, they need different levels of support. The higher up you are, you don't really need what they'll say, they don't really need anything, but just from the point of view of getting your scouts on there to look for players. I know the higher teams, a lot of the scouts that I speak to from the top end of the pyramid, they do focus a lot on release players and stuff like that, which is fantastic for us. So, when we get the release players, that could benefit the top clubs. And working your way down the pyramid, it's using your club, your team to gather a little bit of a following and getting out there. And players can also find you. You might have grassroots players that want to find their local semi-professional club. So they may well find you on there, and then vice versa. If they find you on there, you can check them out and you can invite them down on a Tuesday night training. It's all the way through. There's different pathways. So we're going to cover all the pathways. You've got universities over in America, completely different pathway altogether, but it's an opportunity. So we've
Yeah,
got an option, advertise your university and your facilities, and off the back of that, you may well get the players think, you know what, this is an avenue I like uh, to explore. And then through Footballers Global, again, moving on, when we cover each topic and the education, we'll start talking about that. And so the players actually learn how they can get involved with that sort of thing. So it's not just about becoming a pro. It's not just about that. It's just helping no matter what level you are. For the grassroots side of things, for example, the team, it's completely free again for grassroots teams. So, get your team on there, a little bit of awareness. Some of your players might be registering anyway. Get on there, support your players. We may have brand new football, like my son, for example. He needs to find a little local football team. He may find you on there. Come down training. Um, but not only that, we're also we've got a great ambassador for the referees who we'll introduce again a little bit later. But there's another problem in grassroots football where every week there's so many games that get abandoned due to not having a referee. So we've built a referee registration. So now them grassroots teams can come on, put your area code in, hit enter, and we'll feed you all the referee CVs. And if any of them are available last minute, then that's fantastic. We're saving a grassroots game from getting cancelled.
Yeah.
You know, so it depends what level of team you are to what level of what we can do for you.
Jimmy, how do you feel Footballers Global can sort of like impact players currently, and how it can sort of like slot in and support the, you know, some of these players that are getting released from academies, or actually players in other countries that may not have, you know, they have access to the internet, but they don't have necessarily the access and the exposure to some of these clubs that are maybe missing out. Maybe it's the clubs that are missing out.
I think the benefits can be tenfold, Liam. I really do. I think you know, we've touched on certain aspects of the platform, but what really stands out for me is, obviously from my perspective, is the players that have been released. We want to get them back into football, but even players who haven't had that opportunity yet, who are aspiring football players. Again, we want to give everyone the opportunity, and that goes for the girls as well. You know, we've got a girls section on there.
Yeah.
Girls are, you know, we're more than happy and delighted for girls to join Footballers Global as well. So it's about giving them the opportunity, giving them the awareness, the platform to showcase themselves as well. So it's and as you touched on there, Liam, as well, you know, players from all over the globe, you know, from the far reaches of Africa, who, you know, don't have access to you know, perhaps good coaching sessions or scouting networks. They're able to you know, build a profile, build their CVs, come on our platform, and from that point, you just never know where you're going to get spotted. So it's giving them opportunities whereby years ago that would never have happened. So, you know, for me, I'm so delighted to be a part of Footballers Global. I love the concept. I always have, and it just resonates superbly with me. And you know, if we can get players playing at the highest possible level, they can, then fantastic. We're going to support grassroots football as best we can. I know, Rob, you've got initiatives that we spoke about for you know, a good few months now, about feeding back into grassroots as well, when we get the opportunity to, you know, to buy football kits for grassroots teams, and just help them out as well, because they don't get a lot of support at that level. Yeah, we talk about all the money at the top end, and yes, there is a pyramid and there is funds filtering down, but I think sometimes grassroots football can be left behind, and I think that's where we'll be focusing as well, is giving everyone the platform to shine.
Okay, cool. Is there anything you wanted to add in that, Rob?
No, it's just agree with everything Jimmy said. I mean, I do hear grassroots football, it is a struggle. It is very expensive, even down to hiring a football pitch now. You know, to getting fined for not having a net on your goal, or a corner flag missing or something. So there's so many struggles. But whilst there's so many struggles, there's also so many things thrown in their way to kind of hold them back. So if we can build a community on here to support the grassroots,
yeah,
and like Jimmy said, you know, there's endless stuff that we'd ideally like to become a leading sponsor for grassroots.
Yeah,
you know, and give back with nets and goals and all the basic stuff. What people don't think about, the basic stuff. You know, I imagine there's half of the grassroots football teams probably haven't got a proper first aid kit.
yeah.
You know, there's all these little things that people don't think about. So we're trying to focus and think on all of the things. But you know, ultimately, whilst this is all going on, creating opportunities for players to join us and just be a part of Footballers Global.
Guys, that's all we've got time for today. Thank you for joining us on our first ever Footballers Global podcast. Just want to say a huge thank you to Jimmy and Rob. It's been an absolute pleasure. If you have yet to check out footballersglobal.com, follow the link in the comments section below, or visit us at www.footballersglobal.com.